All right, hey everyone, and welcome to KFVS Streaming Convos with Cunningham. Today we are joined with Representative John Voss from Cape Girardeau, representing the 147th, and thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me in.
For those who may not know, John is from Cape, right? So tell us a little bit about yourself. You grew up in Cape, you went to Cape High School?
I did, yeah. I'm fifth generation Cape County native, product of Cape Central High School, proud Tiger, and graduated from University of Missouri at Rolla. It's now called Missouri Science and Technology with an engineering degree. Spent 3 decades with the Procter & Gamble Corporation, retired back here in Cape Girardeau, and just enjoy serving this area in the state legislature.
So you were first elected in 2022.
Correct.
I remember I helped I moderated one of the debates that you did. What made you decide to get into politics or public service, as it were?
Yeah, well, I had the opportunity to serve 8 years on the Cape Girardeau City Council and really enjoyed that, being able to help my friends and neighbors and see the results of our work come very quickly. The opportunity came up to have an open seat for the state house job, and I decided I'd been retired for a couple of years and thought I had a little more gas in the tank, if you will, and I wanted to give back to the community that's been so good for me and my family.
What have you noticed about Jefferson City, having been there now for a few years, that you didn't know before, the good and the bad? Are there any things that pop out?
Boy, our state government is big and it's complex, right? There's just a lot to take in. We provide a lot of services for people, whether that is in the form of highways, transportation, whether it's in form of social net, safety issues, highway patrol, those types of things. We just have a lot of services, and just trying to get my arms wrapped around everything that we provide and what the costs of that are and how we can make it better for everyday citizens in the state.
What's one of the downsides? I mean, I know traveling probably isn't that much
There's
fun.
no easy way to get from Jeff City to Cape Girardeau, that's for sure. So there's a sacrifice that we make being away from home, basically 6 months out of the year. And then just, knowing if you can really trust somebody up there or not. Politics can be a pretty interesting sport, if you will, and just being able to read people and understand if they're giving you the correct answer or an honest answer, or if they're telling you what they want you to hear in order to get a vote.
Right. Is that something you had to learn the hard way so far?
I've had a couple people burn me, but I think I'm pretty street smart. Went in with my eyes wide open, and I think I'm a pretty good read of people to know when I'm getting a line of truth and when I'm not. So.
Well, let's talk about some specific issues while we have time here. The first thing that we've been covering a lot here on the news is Governor Kehoe's idea to get rid of our personal income taxes,
yes,
and replace them with other taxes to make up the difference in revenue. The first thing that comes to mind is, as a Republican, usually aren't you guys supposed to be against new taxes? I mean, what's your thought on that?
This is an interesting debate that we're getting ready to have. What I think you're seeing is a desire to move away from a tax on production more towards a tax on consumption. So that's the big picture. The proposal that the House Joint Resolution that we want to send to the vote of the people is, should we lift the restriction on having a sales tax on services in the state of Missouri in order for us to eliminate the tax on individual income? So we're not looking at eliminating corporate tax, tax on trusts, LLCs, those things, but we are looking to replace the tax that we receive today on individual income tax with a much broader sales tax on some services.
How would that work for just the average person? So you would save a certain amount of money in your income taxes, obviously state,
Right.
but then you'd be, spending more when you were shopping and things like that?
Exactly, right. So things that you're not taxed on today, for an example, if you go to get your oil changed in your vehicle, you're probably paying tax on the oil and the filter, but you're not paying tax on the labor that does that job. And so that might be something that would be taxed, maybe as an accountant, right? Those types of services that are not currently being taxed today, I think, is what we're going to have the debate about. In the state of the state, the governor was clear that his intention is to not tax real estate, is not to tax agriculture or healthcare. Those are large segments of the economy. Those are under a lot of cost pressures to begin with, and the last thing we want to do is make it more unaffordable to own a home, to be able to get the healthcare that you need, or for the folks that are providing our food and our clothing.
So I know a lot of the concern locally has been, school districts wondering where their funding is going to come from if we get rid of the personal property taxes. Where is it going to come from if we do that?
Sure. So, we really have what I'm going to call a three-legged stool when it comes to taxation in our state. So we have the individual income tax, and that all goes to the state of Missouri. We have the sales tax, which funds both some state operations, but also a lot of our local operations, including the city of Cape Girardeau and the county. And then we have property tax, whether that's real estate tax or personal property tax. Senate Bill 190, and then with the correction in Senate Bill 189, would freeze property taxes on seniors, and I believe that's going to be coming up for a vote in Cape Girardeau County here in April. I just saw some initial language that the commissioners had passed, so I believe that'll be on the ballot in April. That would basically cap growth for seniors in terms of their real estate tax. We have many counties in the state where their assessments have been increased 30, 40, and 50%, and many of our seniors are on fixed incomes, and the last thing we want to do is tax them out of their home while they're trying to afford their medicine and their food. And so many of the school districts are funded locally through property tax, the real estate and the personal property tax, and so our intent is to not take that money away, but to try and provide some relief for our seniors who are on fixed incomes. There's also discussion at the state level. There was a special interim committee on property tax. They have released their report, and we have to abide by the Hancock Amendment in the Constitution, which limits the growth of revenue for our state. The current method of calculating real estate taxes to stay within the Hancock is you look at commercial, agricultural, and residential, and the aggregate of those have to stay within a particular area. We're looking at maybe creating individual silos for those to grow. So if a commercial goes up or goes down, the residents are not having to bear that tax on their personal property. And so there's some interesting things that are going to be happening. What I can guarantee is this session and probably next year's session are going to be focused heavily on both revenue and expenses. So revenue on shifting how we want to collect revenue to provide services at the state. And then we have had a lot of surplus money, I would say, in the last couple of years, and that's coming to a close. Our current budgets for general revenue are projecting to spend more than we take in annually, so we're dipping into our savings account. And at some point, that's going to run out, and we're going to have to right-size the budget to match our income. So those are all conversations that'll happen this session and again in the next session. So a lot of moving pieces here. I'm not sure where that's going to land.
A lot of moving parts.
There's just a lot of things to try and take in right now.
I know there was some debate about whether or not it's fair to let a certain segment, seniors, have a break on their on their
real estate taxes.
Yes, and not just give everybody a break. Where do you fall on that?
I don't think that's a bad argument. I don't know that I have a good argument on why we shouldn't apply it across the board. That was the bill that was introduced, and it found favor, and we believe that it will stand any court test that may come. There's also a conversation around if we eliminate the individual income tax, does that then favor the rich? Because moving to a sales tax, everybody's got to buy something. Mm-hmm. Would that disproportionately hurt people in lower income brackets? It could, but if they've got more money in their pockets, they get to choose how to spend it. Nobody's making people buy things, but if you earn income, we're going to tax that income today. And so it could be a relief for some people.
Is it stealing from Peter to pay Paul, though? If you know what I mean? If you're getting rid of and I know we're bouncing around here, but if you're getting rid of the income tax, but you're raising taxes on other stuff, it seems like it's kind of almost the same thing. You're just kind of deflecting it, no?
It could very well be that way, Jeff. If you compare Missouri to the other states that have no individual income tax, they do have larger sales tax and more robust property taxes. And so taxman's going to get his money to make sure we provide those services. It's just the mix, and we're going to try and shift that and see. We believe that having no income tax will not only keep people in Missouri, but will attract people and maybe attract people that create jobs, and that will help everyone.
All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit. I wanted to ask you about something that's kind of, close to us here. Kathy, what I like about the story, what I'm about to get into is the changes that you were able to facilitate to the standards for coroners in Missouri, which started locally.
It did.
And I was telling Kathy this, Kathy Sweeney, that that was real grassroots, real journalism. She heard from some people who were having some issues with our then coroner in Cape County, and she investigated, did a story, brought it to the attention of the public. You heard about it, you got involved, and then you were able to introduce part of a bill, HB 199, that changed the standards for coroners in the state. I think that's really cool. Something grassroots took hold, and we were able here to be real journalists, or at least she was, and then you were able to make a change there. How was that for you? Was that
That was
satisfying?
great. It was fantastic. First of all, I think Kathy did a tremendous job in her investigative journalism there, so I want to give her a lot of credit. It's unfortunate that those families had to be hurt so badly for that to rise to the point where the state took action on that. As I introduced that bill and as Kathy continued to provide coverage on it, more and more families across the state reached out to me and said, hey, this happened to me in Cedar County, or this happened to me in another county 5-10 years ago, and it's way overdue that we have higher standards for coroners.
Yeah, we should probably explain. I didn't really explain it that well.
Yeah,
but
so
ahead.
until House Bill 199 was signed into law, to be a coroner, you just had to be 21 years of age, be a citizen of the state of Missouri for a year, a citizen of your county for 6 months, and basically go file. And
be elected.
Yeah, and be elected.
And so, a lot of times they ran unopposed.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not a glamorous job. It's a very poor-paying job, and sometimes you get what you pay for. So what we did in House Bill 199 was require every coroner have 20 hours of death investigation training prior to filing for the office of coroner to be elected there. That's a really low hurdle to get over. The Coroner and Medical Examiner Association in the state of Missouri provides that training to their members twice a year, so it's a very accessible course for them to complete. Like I said, it's only 20 hours, so it's not a lot. You get some details, but you can't really go into depth about all the medical issues, but it is such a great win for not only the state, but for the families locally to bring some closure to the pain and suffering that they incurred.
Yeah, I know that the families were very they're happy with what you were able to do and what Kathy was able to do, and congratulations. Honestly, again, it's cool to see local journalism, local lawmakers be able to work together to affect change. So.
And that's one of the best things about the job is being able to help my friends and neighbors. So I'd say probably half of the bills that I have sponsored are a result of a constituent reaching out and saying, I have this concern, I have this issue, is there something we can do? And so I'm happy to carry that flag for them because that's our job. We're supposed to represent their concerns and interests and help try and make a positive change for everybody in the state of Missouri, not just in Cape Girardeau County.
I know another thing that's been going on I wanted to ask you about, speaking of friends, is one of my best friends here in town owns a restaurant.
Okay.
And I know you know about this, but I'll explain it to people who may not. But there's something called a sue and settle tactic that's going around where, and correct me if I get this wrong, but basically there's lawyers that will target a certain restaurant, and several have been targeted in the area, to my knowledge, and they'll go on their website, and if their website isn't ADA compliant,
Correct.
and some of these people, to my knowledge, didn't know that they had to do,
Right.
make it ADA compliant, like people who have hearing problems or
blind.
or blind people, right? And these restaurants, they don't want to not be in compliance. They want all the customers they can get. They don't want to discriminate against anyone. But what they think is happening is these lawyers are hoping that they'll just settle because it's more expensive to sue, to be sued,
right.
to defend themselves. So and some have settled, I've heard, and some haven't.
That's correct.
Okay, so what have you heard about that? And what's going? I think you said something is about to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So the Americans with Disabilities Act is a federal piece of legislation that's been in place for decades, certainly before there were websites, which is really important in the conversation. But to your point, there is an attorney in the Kansas City metro area who has a client that he represents who is blind, who they are using as a way to send letters to businesses with a website to inform them that they're not in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act requirement, and are sending them a letter saying you can settle this now or you can go to court and pay more.
Do you think it's fair, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think it's fair to say that this lawyer and his client are not acting?
They're not acting in good faith. These
right,
are bad,
okay.
These are bad
I wanted to
actors.
make, they're not trying to actually
So his client is
get
blind, and
change.
I can give you an example of some of the testimony that I provided, as well as testimony that occurred 2 weeks ago. So I have filed a bill, like many other members in the House, and there are also 4 in the Senate that have filed the same bill, to address this particular issue. So What is happening is they're getting a demand letter that says you're out of compliance, you can settle for $7,500, or we'll take you to court and we think it'll be $20,000. You pick how much you want to pay.
Right.
But the whole intent is to get them to settle. It is really not for the owner of the website to improve their website. We've had the local Harley Davidson dealer was impacted by that. I was told this morning there was an exterminator here in town that was impacted
several
by that.
businesses,
Several
yeah.
restaurants. And one of the people that testified in support of this bill 2 weeks ago has an online shop, and he has 14,000 photographs on his website. And if you are compliant with ADA, you have to have a descriptor for every single photograph that's on your website, so a person who can't see can hear what that photograph is trying to depict. And to your point, we've had local restaurants who have been targeted by this, who I want to place an order and have it to be carried out from a person who's blind in Kansas City. So that tells me they're really not there to say your website needs to be updated. They're there to try and shake people down for money unnecessarily. And
So devil's advocate, though, do these websites need to be updated? I mean, that is a tall task if you've got 14,000 photos on your website that need
to be compliant with the federal law, yes, they should have accessibility for people that cannot see and they cannot hear. So certainly not excusing the websites from not being in compliance. That having been said, we also believe that this attorney is really not in the business of helping people comply.
Right.
He's in the business of making money. And so we're trying to restrict the intent for only sue and settle. Okay, so the bill that was passed out of committee and will be on the floor this coming Wednesday in the House of Representatives basically provides an opportunity for the owner of the website to begin the process to bring their website in compliance so that they are there making good faith effort to correct the problem that's been identified. If they don't finish that over a certain period of time, then they might be liable. But when you first hear of a problem,
you need to
give
get
you
a chance to fix it.
Right.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do is level the playing field.
So the restaurants that are involved, what would they have to do to make it compliant for ADA? Do you know?
I don't, other than the examples that were brought up in testimony around any photograph is supposed to have an audible description of it. There are ways that you can make your website compliant. There are, in fact, websites that you can use to screen your website to see where you're out of compliance. Interestingly enough, this attorney who is the one going around suing the state, his own website's not in compliance, and I think he might be getting one of these demand letters from an attorney.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so
that's kind
a
of
little karma there.
You probably don't. I mean, I'm all for ADA. Don't get me wrong, and I just don't. You probably don't have too many people with vision problems shopping for Harleys.
Well, I brought that up in testimony. I got a little pushback from one of my colleagues on the other side of
Really?
the aisle.
Oh.
I did, but
Well, I could be wrong because I don't know.
they sell merchandise, but most of the time folks go to look at bikes, not for sweatshirts.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep.
All right, so you've got some stuff I know that you're trying to get done in Jeff City. What are some of the things that are coming up that you'd like to highlight that people should know about?
Yeah, so there's a couple of other things that we're working on. So we talked about the website access litigation problems. A couple of other things that are going on today. I'm more of a good governance kind of a guy. So if we find a statute that needs to be updated to allow our government to function better or to allow a private business to function better, that's what I am. I'm not going to be out there carrying the flag on a lot of the culture war issues. So I don't have time for that. I'll give you a really good example. Today, our highway patrol must ask for the General Assembly's permission to buy a vehicle or an aircraft in excess of $100,000. We're trying to get that raised to $500,000.
What kind of aircraft would that be?
Maybe a King Air or something like that, but it really mostly affects their vehicles.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of our highway patrol driving an SUV, right? And so I don't know if you've priced an SUV lately, but you're approaching $100,000, and then if you equipment with all the communications gear, you've blown past 100. I don't know that we need the colonel of the highway patrol to come to the legislature every time they need to replace a vehicle.
Right.
That's just not good business sense. So trying to get that limit raised so they can operate their business in a very efficient way. Also looking to modify some of the unemployment insurance as well as the workers' compensation programs and how those taxes are collected. Some of those are only available to the legislature to collect in increments of 0.5%. And if we could take that to 0.1%, it'll right size the amount of money we're collecting and let businesses keep that money to pay their employees more, to cover some of the increasing healthcare costs, those types of things. So just good governance types of bills is really what I'm after. Trying to extend the sunset on tax credits that you get when you donate to a food pantry. Again, we see in Southeast Missouri, so many of our counties are in a food desert. We have a lot of people that don't have security in their food, and we just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to continue to support our friends and neighbors that are under a little hard times.
What about HB 1783, the public health services? How does that?
Yeah,
how would that
so,
work?
during the pandemic that we experienced here the last few years, one of the things that we realized in the state of Missouri is that if we get federal funds, we don't always have the capacity inside of the Department of Social Services to administer those funds. And we've left federal money on the table, if you will, because we just didn't have the capacity to do that. So the bill that I've introduced and had a hearing this past week would allow us to partner with some nationally accredited health institute type of organizations in the state to get that money and to get it out into the field where we need it so desperately. Missouri typically ranks in the bottom 10% of health outcomes and last in funding, and we have an opportunity to help correct some of that with a simple statute change, and that's what I'm advocating for.
Well, there's a lot going on, and I appreciate you coming in to talk about it. We're starting to run out of time, but I know you and your brother, Chuck,
Yes.
who used to work here.
That's right.
Chuck, good guy.
Yep,
Both
great.
very involved with the Boy Scouts.
Scouting program, that's right.
Yeah, you're an Eagle Scout.
Chuck and my brother Dewart and I are all Eagle Scouts. My 3 sons are Eagle Scouts, and Chuck's
Very
son
cool.
is an Eagle Scout. We have 7 in our family.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
So how is scouting going? I thought there were it was starting to what's the right word? It was starting to lose some popularity. Is it struggling, or is it doing well locally?
There are a lot of things that compete for young people's time today, right?
Yeah.
So we certainly have our phones and our screens that seem to consume a lot of time. There's a lot more traveling sports programs than perhaps when my brothers and I grew up. What I will tell you is the scouting program continues to instill the values that America is returning to. So citizenship, personal fitness, character development, all those things are foundational for leadership, and our country desperately needs more leaders than we have today. So
Yeah,
I
being
would
an Eagle
encourage
Scout's
anyone.
hard, right?
It is, but it's a weekly commitment. There's outings that you can go on once a month, a summer camp for a week-long activity. It just teaches so many life skills that perhaps aren't being taught elsewhere today. So I wouldn't say that the program is struggling or waning in terms of its popularity. There's just a lot of competition for young people's time, and I would wholeheartedly encourage anyone to get involved in the scouting program. It's been great for my family, and I think Eagle Scouts carry themselves a little differently. You can see that in their personality.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, thank you for coming in.
Thanks
I
for having
appreciate
me,
you
Jeff.
taking the
Yep.
time. I know you're heading back to Jefferson City on Sunday.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and bringing these things to our attention.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us, everyone. This is Convos with Cunningham, and we'll see you next time.